Hello, and welcome to another edition of your favorite recycling podcast, Recycle. Don't be a waster. This one was prompted, or today's topic, I should say, was prompted by something I'm seeing increasingly just on my daily commute and just walking around my suburb here in Sydney. And that is people before the day before your council or municipal bin collection looking through your yellow bin for bottles, containers, cans, fundamentally to return them to the New South Wales Return and Earn scheme. Obviously, this will apply to all other states and territories also, where you have a return and earn. I'm assuming you're saying the same things, but just in recent weeks, I think it's almost picked up a new level. I'm seeing not just one or two people going around. I'm seeing vans, people who look quite organised, people who seem to be dedicating quite a bit of time to it. I think we covered in a previous podcast, could you make decent money doing this? And look, I think we came up with the solution or the result that, you can't make a living from it, but it can certainly supplement an income. The Guardian newspaper here has an article on this very topic just this week, the Guardian Australia version, and it's covering two retirees or retired people, and some mornings they can make $100 just from 2 or 3 hours work going around looking through bins. So, fundamentally the mechanism here is you get the bottles and cans that would go into commingled bins and realistically would probably be recycled anyway. And then you take them to the New South Wales Government Return and Earn scheme, and you get 10 cents per eligible container. You get 10 cents back that can either go to, I think you can donate them to charity, or secondly, you can just get them paid to you in cash. So, look, I can see why people do it. It's, tax-free, non-committal, and so people are doing that, and I can completely understand it. What made me The question I'm asking today fundamentally is is it legal? Can you just look through somebody else's bin? Is this the equivalent of dumpster diving, or is it an invasion of privacy? So I just thought I'd look into that for today's topic. And weirdly, this is a word or a term I've never heard before, and it's called bin fossicking. So I'm not sure if that's a common term, but it's the first time I've ever heard of it. But bin fossicking is not a clearly defined legal term, at least in New South Wales, but it basically means rummaging through bins, whether public or private. I think it's a bit different to dumpster diving, which is when you're actually looking for something in particular, but it more or less covers what we're discussing. So we're looking for recyclables, bottles, and other goods. And for the sake of today's podcast, we'll just focus in on this dumpster diving. The question as to whether or not it's legal is a bit of a grey area, seemingly. In New South Wales, there is no blanket statewide law that explicitly makes going through bins illegal. But there's a couple of things, and obviously this podcast, as you, I'm pretty sure you're aware, is not by any means legal advice, so shouldn't be taken in that regard. But it's just purely an expression of opinions and what my thoughts on the topic. I think the issue is that it's the private property is the first issue, and if the bin is on private land, such as your driveway, your yard, God forbid inside a garage, that is then private property, and nobody has the right, obviously, to go onto your property without permission. So until the bin is placed on the curb for collection, its contents in New South Wales are generally the property of the owner, and then taking the items from that could be theft. When it gets put out for the curb, generally the way it works for your council is you will leave the bins out the night before for pickup. Once a bin is placed on the street for council collection, the ownership often transfers to the local council or the waste authority, and most councils don't explicitly prohibit this practice. So that's another thing. I'll come with a caveat to that in a minute, because apparently some councils do specifically prohibit it. And then the only other thing to bear in mind is littering and safety. This fossicking, basically rummaging through the bins, if it leads to any rubbish being strewn about, you could face fines under the Protection of the Environment Operations Act 1997 that basically just covers littering, and fines will be sort of $250 for individuals. Other stuff like health and safety risks will be more by incident, by reported, discussed and managed as they occur. Other stuff such as taking stuff from public bins, like in parks, typically isn't illegal, but again, it's still discouraged by waste authorities and council, etc., just due to safety and hygiene. So it's it's a bit of a strange one. Bin fossicking. I think this is a topic that we're going to see more and more of. Firstly, the question as to whether the return earned schemes really do boost recycling, or whether it's just cannibalization of recycling that would have occurred otherwise. I.e., would those bottles and cans have been recycled anyway? And I suppose if you're taking them out of a yellow recycling bin, we'd have to assume in the vast majority of cases, unless that truck is full of contamination, that it will be recycled. So it's a bit of a displacement issue here. I think that's in Sydney generally. It's not seen as a crime, but I'm also reading on other topics, other areas, that it is in some councils it is prohibited. So in Victoria and Queensland particularly, rules can differ, and in the town of Wodonga, Albury Wodonga, and I think this only applies to the Victorian side of the border, you could be subject to a $180 fine under council bylaws. This is per 9news.com.au. In Wodonga, local law prohibits people from interfering with rubbish bins that are placed on the curbside in readiness for collection. Raiding those bins is not condoned, and participating in this activity will put you at risk of a fine. So they're clearly going pretty clearly on one side of the argument. This is in Brisbane, East Brisbane, Redland City Council. Under the EPA rules 2019, people are not permitted to disturb or otherwise interfere with the contents of a waste container. This means commercial bins, community bins, household wheelie bins, even once they're on the curbside, must not be disturbed unless it's your own rubbish or it's council's waste and recycling collection contractor. It's pretty. They're pretty clear on it. We've got one here in Sydney. Canterbury Bankstown Council advises the following. Start quote: "Those who would like to discourage people going through the bins can put their bin out as late as possible the night before collection, or put a sign on their bin saying all containers have been cashed already." So that's more of a preventative measure, I guess, a bit like, businesses having signs up saying no cash kept on premises. That's more of an advisory, or, going into a car park being told to, lock away your valuables. So, generally it seems in Sydney, at least, Newcastle, it seems to be the major metros in New South Wales, and also in Melbourne, it seems not to be actually prohibited, but potentially frowned upon. That might be a way of describing it. I think we probably covered in another podcast whether this really does boost recycling to any large extent. Just reading here that in New South Wales alone, there's been more than 1 billion Aussie dollars paid out in refunds since 2017. So we're not by any means talking small dollars here. We're talking big numbers. Okay, so that's obviously, look, I'm also very aware of the social aspects to this, where people are saying that this is due to the cost of living crisis, and people need to do it. I'm not making any value judgment here or moral stuff on this. I think we're all having a tough time at the minute with the economy and interest rates, etc. So we fully understand that some people feel this is necessary and a good way to make a living. So not making any judgments or thoughts on that. Just really just looking into the actual mechanics of it and whether it is legal or not. But again, of course, don't take this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a solicitor. So don't take this purely as entertainment, and don't take this in any way as legal advice. Okay, we'll leave it there. I'll be interested to see what you all think of this, and whether it actually boosts recycling at all, or whether it's really is it a greenwashing thing? I've heard that also argued. So I think we'll leave it there today. And as always, recycle. Don't be a waster.